So I'm headed to meet an investor of mine. He's a very prominent personality. Just visiting, comes and flies down through Dubai a couple of times. What we're doing right now with some of his properties are we are managing them. People properties are managing his property, specifically to exit him from the portfolio some of the properties in a good price. This is my guess. I think prices go up by 2021. I could be wrong on this one. Yeah, I'm not like putting bets down on this, but right now, if we put a tenant, so here's something that you need to know about real estate. Now, everybody says this, and even I say this a lot of times, that real estate is one of those true places where you can get passive income. What you need to actually understand is that even while real estate gets you passive income, you can't be passive about your investment, right? What do I mean by that? Real estate, in my opinion, is like a living, breathing asset. You have to be continuously on guard with what's happening with your real estate, whether it's land, forest, an apartment, what's happening with your real estate asset around the asset. What do I mean by that? Let me recall a story. About 5 or 6 years ago, there was a gentleman who owned a property in a prime spot. I'm not going to name the city, and I'm not going to name the location for all viewers' benefit. Next to his property, they were building let's just say a religious place of worship. Okay, nothing against any religious place of worship, but you need to be wary and aware of that, because when they build a religious place of worship next to your place, there's a couple of things that are going to happen. You're going to get and attract a lot of potential buyers who want to live close to that religious place of worship, and that's perfectly fine, right? But you're also going to get some buyers who don't want to live close to that religious place of worship, and it's nothing to do with them being discriminatory or anything. They just don't want to be disturbed. Sometimes they just don't feel that the extra traffic that comes up during that time is going, like at the time when things are popular and people are visiting that religious place of worship, they don't feel that people are going to want to live there as tenants. So lo and behold, once that place of worship was complete, his property price fell, I think, about 30 to 45%, if I remember correctly. We had to sell it like almost distressed pricing, right? So the same thing applies to this gentleman's property portfolio. If we put a tenant in Dubai, the law states that you need to give a tenant 12-month notice to sell the property, right? Now in Dubai, you can exit your tenant only under 3 circumstances. That's the law. Number 1, you want to sell the property. Number 2, you want to live in the property yourself, and you got to prove that you've got no other property that you own. You or your first relative, right? I think brother and sister also comes under this. Last but not the least, you got to prove to the court that serious repair needs to be undertaken on that property. If that serious repair doesn't get undertaken, maybe the roof would fall on the tenant or something like that. That's the only 3 reasons. But with all 3, you've got to give a court notice, and you've got to give the tenant 12-month period, which I personally believe is completely fair, because it gives the tenant 12 months to budget his next move, understand where he's going to be staying, and if he doesn't have enough money, then perhaps he goes to a property that costs less, or at the same time, if he has the money, he can go to a property that costs more. So in this particular case, this landlord of ours, we are maintaining his property by not renting it out, because if you rent it out, you can't really sell it, because a property that's tenanted is extremely difficult, current circumstances in Dubai, to sell it, right? It's very obvious, right? Why is it difficult to sell? Because if there's a tenant in there, viewings become very difficult. And I've been on both sides of the fence, where I've sold property that was tenanted, and I have failed at selling property that was tenanted as well. And the reason being why I failed was, I take blame for that. Some of the mismanagement that went over with the tenant. Tenant was a great friend. It was good. Everything was good. But, I think we ended up even doing like, I don't know, 10, 12 viewings. but we had priced the property wrong, so we couldn't really sell it. And at some stage, the tenant had a falling out with the landlord because the landlord had promised him that if he allows for the viewings, the landlord's going to allow him to deduct almost $3,000 off his annual rent. The problem is the landlord never put anything in writing. The tenant never asked for anything in writing. And before his next quarterly payment was due, the tenant said, I want my money. I want my money. I want the discount that you promised me. It's almost $3,000. I think $3,000 or $6,000. I forget now. It was about 5 or 6 years ago. And the landlord / seller turned around to the tenant and said, hey man, my property ain't sold yet. And I was expecting to sell at a profit. Then I would give you this $3,000 or $6,000 off. Right now, I'm giving you the discount. So guess what the tenant did? He shut the phone and he shut the door on any future viewings. Like nothing became possible. No viewing. You know, I had like this great relationship. I used to take chocolate boxes to him. Right? Before a viewing, we would send in the maid to clean the apartment up, right? We'd pay for the maid as well, right? And all of a sudden, this guy just said, you know what? That's it. I ain't gonna let anybody in. And sometimes you might have even put it contractually in the contract that he needs to let viewings happen, but you know what? He doesn't care, right? And what are you gonna do? That's one side. So this was like more of a financial reason why he didn't want viewings. But depending on which region you are in and depending on who your tenant is, he might be a very private person. He might not want you coming into their house. I honestly don't want anybody coming into my house unannounced or even announced. I don't want strangers going through my house, right? So sometimes tenants are awesome. Coming back to the story. So we're short-term renting this gentleman's apartment. In Dubai, you can do that legally. There are ways and means. Just DM me or send me a message and I'll tell you how it's done. And the idea is because the property's on short-term rentals, when the market picks up and you're ready to sell, you just sell it, right? You don't have to deal with a tenant who's staying there and who's not willing to play ball. Does that make sense? Okay. Look. A lot of people think that Dubai's market's tanked so people aren't investing. That development is taken on by the government and a government arm. And I think it's called Al Wasl One. It's like prime location, superbly, very close to the main arteries, main areas of Dubai, which are very well known. And the reason they're coming up is, you know, this is what smart investors do. As soon as prices go down and the contractors and the builders are hungry for work and they'll give you deals on the work that they do, that's when they start developing their land, right? So people who are landowners, you will see that when the prices are low and the real estate's slower, will generally build during these times. Not because they can just sell, but also because they can save a ton of money on getting the work done. It's when the market's booming and there's so many clients in the market that all the builders, the mechanical engineering and the plumbing companies, the consultants, the permissions, the marketing, everything has a certain inflation that kicks in, right? So when inflation kicks in, it becomes more expensive to build. It means less money in your pocket and more money to your service providers, right? So you got, I don't know, it's very counterintuitive, but you got to be brave and have strong steel balls to be able to go out in the market when things are slow to invest, right? Does that make sense? Okay. So I've just finished my meeting with my investor. He's a very private person, so I couldn't put him on camera, but great meeting. Gave him an update on his property portfolio, what we're looking at doing in the next couple of years. He's probably going to look at investing a little bit more money over here, just because Dubai has this, we're at like a 5-year low in terms of property prices, so it's good. The interesting thing is that serious business people have a certain aura. So he's been doing business before I was born, right? He's got a certain aura of patience and reliability and certainty in the way they do business, right? Like for instance, even look at the hotel. This hotel, and if you look at this this mall right behind me, this is one of the first malls in Dubai. It's called Al Ghurair Center. And we as kids growing up in Dubai, this was one of the primary places you would always come to with your family, right? So, okay, back to the investor, right? Oh, by the way, this is what old Dubai looks like, okay? So just to give you an idea, that this is what old Dubai looks like, still hustling, still bustling, with a lot of business, okay? There's billions of dollars worth of business that gets transacted in these short buildings. They're not as flashy and fancy as the new Dubai, but trust me, there's a lot of business that gets transacted here, and a lot of our investors who own, like, I know one, for instance, I remember, I put a tenant in his property 5-6 years ago. He owns 6 villas or houses, in New Dubai, in like a gated, nice community. He doesn't want to move there to one of his own villas because this is where his business grew. This is where he has actually grown, and his family and his kids have grown up. He doesn't want to actually move from this area. Coming back to the point of my investor and being a very solid, astute business person, you know, we also always learn from our investors, because sometimes, not sometimes, a lot of times they've got a lot of experience. So I always pick up tips and tricks from them as well. And one of the things I learned today from him is, like, he was telling me, you know, I want to acquire assets which are quickly, flexibly liquid rather, not illiquid, and can be quickly sold off. And then I said a few things to him, and he said, look, I don't believe in being boxed in my way of thinking on a particular asset class. So I don't want just studios. I don't want a full building. I want to be open to the business opportunities that are coming, because then I can acquire the opportunity and either flip it or keep it for cash flow. And that's my main learning from today's meeting with my investor. And look at the old Dubai. I actually like this. Gino, you like this place? Yeah, my cameraman also likes it. All right, catch you guys soon on the other side. Hit the subscribe button. Come on, press the bell icon, yeah? All right, let's go.